This young black boy named Bernard Garrett works as a shoe shiner at the main bank in a small Texas town.
Boy, those are pretty good chance.
It's 1939, the height of racial discrimination in America. The young man does his work unhurriedly, deliberately to eavesdrop on conversations between bank employees and clients. He's not interested in the small money from shining shoes. He works slowly to have time to listen to the financial secrets. After finishing work, he writes down everything he managed to learn in a notebook. One day, when he's eavesdropping on bankers' conversation by the window and figuring out how they assess the value of mortgaged real estate, he gets noticed. The chauffeur of one of the bank's clients chases the boy away.
Your dad's gonna hear about this.
In the evening, his father looked into his son's notebook, understands that his child is gifted with special intelligence, but admits that he's unlikely to get rich because white people simply won't allow it. But Bernard's eyes are full of determination. 15 years later, having saved enough money, Bernard moves with his wife Eunice and son from conservative Texas to more democratic California. So he decides to start his business here. The family of 3 stayed with his wife's uncle in a small room for a fee. The uncle offers Bernard a job at a factory.
Well, thank you, sir, but I came here to try my hand at real estate.
Which causes the uncle to laugh. When Bernard went to put his son to bed, the man tries to talk sense into his niece, but she stands firmly behind her husband.
My husband is a genius. You'll see.
Then Bernie promises his wife that he'll take her and their son out of this dump as soon as possible. The next day, Bernard gives his cousin a ride to work, where he meets a smart white guy named Matt. Bernard studies all the offers on the market and tries to negotiate prices down. Thanks to his observational skills, he notices that the black neighborhood in Los Angeles is overcrowded and bursting at the seams, while in the white neighborhood, there are many empty houses. Black people have a need for rentals and financial means, but no market. This is an excellent opportunity for real estate speculation and rentals. He managed to find one apartment building with weeds at the front door. Unfortunately, the house needs repairs. There's only enough money for the building itself. His wife is surprised that her husband is targeting a white neighborhood. Then his wife says she can find an investor. She takes him to a jazz club owned by her old acquaintance, a black playboy named Joe Morris. In conversation, Joe shows off and teases Bernard, which irritates the man, and he hastily leaves the company. His wife says that he just looks like Nick Fury on the outside, but he's actually a normal and reliable person who is friends with the city's mayor. There's nothing left but to go to the house owner and try to negotiate the price down. The owner turns out to be a very shrewd entrepreneur with a distinct Irish accent. He goes to the owner and says, "You've only rented out half the apartments, so why not sell it to me? I'll give you $30,000 now, and another $10,000 when I rent out all the rooms." Although the owner admires his idea, Bernard's persistence, his wit, and mathematical talent impresses the Irishman, but he's not ready to take the risk and refuses Bernard. Before leaving, Bernard glimpses the bank's name on a calendar and the name of his personal manager. That same day, he heads to that bank and tries to speak with the manager, but the secretary brazenly lies to the man's face, essentially dismissing the black man. Then Bernard is forced to wait for the manager several hours on the street. After work hours at the bank entrance, Bernard starts a dialogue with the manager and, in an attempt to secure a loan, tells him about his deal. That night, Bernard is ready to give up.
"There's a phone call for you."
But the Irishman calls him and starts the conversation with a complaint. "You mentioned my name to get a loan from Mr. Reed at the bank." However, he gives him pleasant news. The manager will give him the loan because the Irishman is ready to become his guarantor. He's impressed by Bernard's ambition and understands that such a determined person will truly be able to succeed in business. This moves the man to tears. Bernard and his cousin do some minor repairs in the house when suddenly one tenant notices him when she sees a black man at her door. She immediately starts ordering the black man around, but during the conversation, Bernard admits that he bought this house. But a few hours later, police arrive. They say the elderly woman called them because black people are pretending to be the owner. Bernard states that he is indeed the owner, which causes the police to laugh. Then he shows them a copy of the title document.
Try to be more respectful to your tenants.
In the evening, Bernard moves into one of the apartments, which causes wild outrage from the elderly woman. So the next day, she moves out of the apartment. But the housing doesn't stay empty for long. At that very moment, a well-off black woman moves into the apartment. As he predicted, the market of black renters is huge, and the building quickly fills up. Bernard gives the Irishman the remaining sum. The man offers Bernard to run a joint business. He proposes buying houses thanks to his reputation at the bank, and splitting all profits in half. He's Irish, and therefore Americans are reluctant to make deals with him. Over time, they buy up a huge number of houses throughout the area, and business starts booming. Bernard also moves from the apartment building to a mansion, soon providing a happy life for his beloved family. However, life doesn't always go smoothly, and problems can arise at any moment. After the Irishman's death, his wife offers Bernard to sell his share, as she's not going to do business jointly with a black man. She offers a sum 4 times below market value. Bernard says he owns half the houses, but since the agreement was verbal, the woman might not pay anything at all. So Bernard has 2 options: take what's offered or try to sue and be left with nothing. In attempts to find a witness to their agreement, he goes to the bank manager, but he refuses to receive him, as he's already working with the Irishman's wife. Extremely disappointed, Bernard stands in the bank and looks around. Just because of his skin color, he's often despised when he enters the bank. At the door, he notices a sign with companies that rent offices in this building. Among them are mainly banks, and an insanely bold and practically unrealistic idea comes to his mind: to buy this building so that no manager would ever dare to ignore him again. His bold idea forces him to disregard prejudices and principles and turn to Joe Morris. Bernard proposes to Joe to jointly buy this building, since he owns a number of commercial buildings in black neighborhoods and understands the commercial real estate market. But the shrewd businessman isn't eager to venture into white territory.
There's not a single black-owned building in downtown Los Angeles, and there's a reason for that.
But Bernard convinces him with the phrase that banks won't dare refuse them a loan while being in their building. Of course, Joe likes this idea. Naturally, no one will want to sell this building to black people. Moreover, they won't even communicate with them. Therefore, they offer Matt to become their front man. The guy is frightened by the proposal and says he can't handle such a role. And Joe himself, seeing this simpleton, doesn't believe it can work out, but Bernard is confident he can be trained. Matt sits in a cafe, deep in thought. A waitress recognizes him. She went to the same school with him. And during the conversation, Matt says he was offered a partnership in a real estate business. The modest factory worker felt real pride when he told the girl this, and she also began to communicate with him more respectfully. This played a key role in making the decision, and he gladly agrees to the deal with burning eyes. The businessmen begin teaching the guy all the intricacies of rich people's lives. Joe teaches him to play golf and conduct conversations with wealthy people. Bernard tries to explain how multipliers work. Seeing the guy's vacant stare, Bernard understands they need to start training with the most elementary things.
Maybe we should start with a math review.
And within a month, he easily performs complex mathematical calculations. Joe organizes a game for him at an elite golf club in the city, where he supposedly accidentally meets the owner of that very building named Charles Renault. When meeting with the building owner, Matt demonstrates superior knowledge of all the financial prospects of this building. Even his accountant with a calculating machine can't keep up with the guy. In the end, he corners the businessman. With his help, the partners celebrate victory and immediately begin buying houses in white neighborhoods, having access to favorable loans. The manager, who constantly dismissed Bernard, is bewildered at how everything in life can turn around. They own 177 buildings, some of them with more than 100 apartments. They even personally met with the vice president of the country in their building. But Matt married his pretty waitress. In 1963, Bernard, already a successful businessman, comes to his small Texas town to see his father Britton. After dinner, his father admits he's proud of his son. Bernard says that black people have it easier in California, but the man tells his son that it's not about California at all, but about him. These words inspire the guy. The next day, he goes for a walk around his town with his son in expensive brand new suits. The boy is surprised that people stare at them so much. The man explains that this place is drastically different from California. They approach Mainland Bank, near which Bernard used to shine shoes and gain invaluable knowledge.
Hey, how much for a shine?
Only do white folks here, sir.
In the evening, he admits to his wife that he wants to buy a bank so that black people in Texas also have a chance at a decent life. After all banks in Texas create unrealistic conditions for loans to black people with inflated interest rates. Upon returning to Los Angeles, Bernard tries to get Joe on board with this venture, but he says it's already looking like altruism for black people, not business. Moreover, according to Texas rules, they won't even be able to enter this bank to control Matt, because black people are only allowed into the bank as service staff. But seeing that Bernard will do what he planned with or without him, he agrees to this crazy venture. They bring Matt to a meeting with the bank owner, Robert Florence. Joe accompanies Matt under the guise of a chauffeur. The bank owner is ready to sell his business for the agreed sum with one condition. His son, Robert Florence Jr., must remain at the bank in the position of credit expert, and the owner also keeps 20% of shares. But despite this, the deal goes according to plan, and the trio successfully acquires the bank. Bernard immediately announces that he and his partners acquired Mainland Bank to change the lending policy for black people, and he needs their help to identify reliable borrowers. Bernard issues dozens of loans for business and housing to black people. But Florence Jr., who hoped to inherit the business from his father, gets to the bottom of the large number of new loans. Then he starts following his director altogether and notices how he secretly meets with Bernard and reports to him on the progress of work. The next day, Florence tracked down the businessmen's meeting place. He bursts into Bernard's house and starts threatening to tell residents who really owns the bank and to whom loans are issued.
But if this town found out that not only was their bank regularly making loans to Negroes, it was actually owned by two of them, there'd be a run on the bank.
Then Florence pulls out a notice from the Treasury that their annual audit has been moved up 2 quarters due to an anonymous tip. When Florence leaves, Matt and his wife propose to the partners to buy another bank, some small one, to resell all black people's loans to that bank. The guy explains to the men that this is a good solution, but Bernard understands they won't be able to manage another bank. Matt demands to be entrusted with the bank completely under his leadership. In the new bank, Bernard's wife works as a cleaning lady to keep an eye on Matt. Bernard creates a list of loans that need to be transferred to the new bank and instructs Matt to double-check all loans before signing and only work with their verified lawyer. But Matt, believing in his abilities, decided to deviate from their plan. He hired a lawyer on Florence's advice, and during the signing of the transfer deed, Matt, with an important air, ran through the list of loan agreements without even bothering to study them properly.
I just wrote a check for $971,000.
Florence calls him and says that white clients are massively coming to Mainland Bank and closing their deposits because someone told them that the bank issues loans to black people.
This can't be chance.
Matt's not ready.
Bernard, in a janitor's uniform, tries to help Matt explain to the inspector how deals work at their bank, but this helps little because the manager finds loans that such a small bank can't hold. After the audit, after consulting, the partners decide to sell the small bank to save Mainland Bank. But Matt isn't ready to simply step away from the bank where he finally manages the entire process, and the guy continues to rush. Matt buys back all loans on behalf of Mainland Bank. Joe and Bernard rush to Mainland to stop Matt, but didn't make it in time.
What the hell are you doing?
Before they can explain to Matt how badly he messed up, Treasury Department employees burst into the bank. At the exit from the bank, the FBI meets them and arrests. A lawyer says that their case will be used to adjust laws regarding banking. The senator himself at this time talks with Matt and says he needs to blame everything on his partners so as not to end up behind bars for 50 years himself. Matt does just that at the first hearing.
They were my employers. I carried out their wishes to the letter.
And all these loan sales he carried out under Bernard's pressure. Next, the senator talks with Bernard and tells him to admit how he deliberately used a loophole in the law to illegally enrich himself. Then Congress will adjust the laws as beneficial to white people, but Bernard will be free. But if he decides to hold his line in court and pontificate about racial discrimination, he'll be facing prison time. The second day of hearings arrived. Bernard takes out a janitor's uniform and declares that this is the only way black people can enter a bank.
Remove the witness. Why is it so important to you to exclude an entire race of people from the American dream?
Of course, the Senate is dissatisfied with such a performance and sentences Bernard and Joe to 3 years in prison for misuse of finances. The court confiscated all their property. Matt remained free. Florence bought his father's bank at an auction organized by the Treasury for a sum much lower than what Joe and Bernard paid his father. Several years after the sentence, Congress was forced to pass the Fair Housing Act, according to which it was prohibited to refuse sale or rental of real estate based on national, religious, or gender grounds. 3 years later, Bernard is released from prison, where Joe meets him. The men are incredibly happy that they got off easy, but Bernard's wife doesn't understand what there is to be happy about, since they're now bankrupt. And then Bernard admits that before the first hearing, Matt called him and confessed that the senator pressured him, and he would simply be forced to testify against Bernard. It turns out, the person Matt called on the eve of his testimony was Bernard. He told Bernard about the senator's deal and apologized to him. In response, Bernard asked Matt for a favor, to sell part of their property and buy 2 mansions in the Bahamas for him and Joe, which Matt successfully accomplished. This story is based on real events and tells of a true struggle against a system designed for social inequality. Bernard and Joe's residential real estate played an important role in the fight against housing segregation in Los Angeles, and they still have 2 mansions next to each other in the Bahamas.